Although I do want to end with one last note on ideology.
Yeah.
So, after all, this was a vastly different economic system and way of governing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting how it all started and what the vision was. So, somewhere the vision was for this to spread like a wildfire throughout the
Yeah.
world, right?
Yes.
And but it didn't spread. I mean, it did in Asia though, like to China.
Yeah, well, bit spread in China and Vietnam, but it didn't exactly spread like it was intended. So the original idea of Marx and Engels and the other communist thinkers was that the revolution would break out in industrialized states like Great Britain or Germany or France, for example. They didn't expect it to break out in countries which were Russia was industrializing, but it was very much an agricultural country. And communist revolutions, they didn't break up in sort of industrial states, but like China, Vietnam, and Cuba. So it turned out to be a very much a different reality. And this sort of communism didn't spread as it should have. So Soviets would have Stalin resorted to this idea of socialism in one country for a while. So there wasn't a world revolution, so we'll build our own in our own country socialism, and this was the sort of strategy that they took after the world revolution failed. No, well, after the victory in the Second World War, maybe there was more belief in the spread of the revolution, but I think the Soviet leaders after Lenin, they were more pragmatic.
Mm. Well, it's in some way it's difficult for something to spread which is not a complete solution. Like if communism would have been able to remove the authoritarian, organizing central state, then maybe it would have spread more. But it didn't work. So it's a it's an achievement to be able to spread with something that isn't working in the first place. Um, but that point aside, unless you have any comments, um, perhaps I did a little bit of an overemphasis on communism in this episode because Russia is so much more than that system. It's like just these hundreds of years that we have gone through now. It's communism is actually only about 10% of the mentioned time, maybe
Yeah,
less, maybe five.
but one could say that Soviet Union uh, it is right to emphasize that period because it had such a vast impact on the present Russian person. So, like Russian empires over 100 years ago, it lasted for centuries, but maybe the current Soviet, no, Russian individual Russian citizen is much more shaped by the Soviet experience, and the people presently ruling over Russia, they are much the Soviet people. So I don't think you are mistaken in emphasizing the Soviet experience.
Yeah, that is right. What you're saying. I don't know if it's the technology or probably it's the technology and just the vast impact that it had and on the rest of the world, like less of an isolationist strategy and maybe the opposite.
Yeah,
So that also affects a lot more
yeah.
and a lot of big changes that didn't happen during the earlier centuries. I hope you enjoyed that clip of the HH podcast. If you want to see another clip, click here down to your left. And if you want to see the whole unedited episode, click down here to your right. And last but not least, if you want to subscribe, you can do so here in the middle. Thank you.